All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to our coffee break. We do these at the end of every month, just try and show folks what we're working on and what's going on in the health and wealth industry. I'm Greg Hirschberger, Managing Director of Health and Benefits at Greenwald. I'm joined by Lisa Wyszynski, our Senior Associate, and today we're going to be talking about the 2025 Workplace Wellness Survey that we run annually with EBRI, the Employee Benefits Research Institute. This is, I believe, our seventh year running this study, and we're just going to be going through a handful of key findings from the study from this year. And I stand corrected, this is year 6 of the Workplace Wellness Survey in its current form. So we're going to walk through just a handful of the findings from this year, focusing on some of our new questions. The short report is uploaded on our website and on EBRI's website, so feel free to go take a look at that. Has a little bit more information than what we're going to be covering today. But just for background, in this study, we interviewed about 1,400 full-time and part-time workers aged 21 to 64. We had a national sample of about 1,000 folks and an oversample of about 400 Black workers. Today, we'll be focusing on the main sample. EBRI is going to be releasing an issue brief on the Black oversample in the coming weeks, so keep an eye out for that. The study was fielded last summer, 20-minute survey, and we fielded from July 18th through August 5th. Obviously, weighted the data by race, age, gender, and income to reflect the employed population of Americans. Margin of error, 2.5 percentage points. So I want to start just by talking about overall well-being and current concerns for workers. This is kind of our benchmark question that we ask every year. Ask folks to rate their level of concern about their financial well-being, emotional, physical, and workplace well-being. And we found that financial well-being concerns have remained the highest, but they seem to have plateaued the past few years. We can see the mean is at about 6.3 out of 10, with 10 being the highest concern. So that's stayed about the same the past handful of years. But we're seeing higher concern for emotional well-being, mental health, and workplace well-being. So those have increased over the past couple of years, ticking up for emotional well-being from an average of 5.5 to almost 6, and same for workplace well-being. So focusing in on the highest concern area there, which was financial well-being, we asked our respondents how concerned they are about each of these items impacting their finances. Number one there was rising inflation, 89% showing at least somewhat of a concern about rising inflation. Now, again, this was fielded last summer. I saw that some of the recent inflation metrics were not horrible or not where they were in prior years. So interested to see what that looks like in the 2026 iteration of the survey. Second on the list there, 87% of folks concerned about the cost of healthcare. I don't think this will come as a surprise to anybody. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, employers expect to pay 6.5% more for health coverage in 2026. And then, those buying on the marketplace, potentially seeing subsidies expiring, looking at even larger increases. And that's for the cost of health insurance, which is also third on the list. So both healthcare, health insurance, really leading the way here. Had a bit of an uptick on those concerned that the economy will go into a recession in the next 12 months. That's at 80%. And similarly, an uptick in those who think that the stock market will be lower in 12 months than it is today now. A lot of people concerned with the trade war, which obviously has a direct impact on the prior two items, trade war being at 80% concern among workers. So here's a favorite of ours when it comes to asking about financial wellness. We ask to what extent do people feel prepared to handle unexpected expenses? And 77% say that they are at least somewhat prepared to handle an unexpected expense of $500, and about half say the same of an expense at $5,000. So preparedness is up for both an unexpected expense of $500 and $5,000 this year, which is great, but you know, with inflation looming and how that has been going the past handful of years could play a factor in that. Um, but how would people come up with the funds to pay for those? About half, whether it's a $500 expense or $5,000 expense, say they would take it from their savings or their investments. But you'll see that for that $5,000 expense, the share of those who would have to take out a personal loan more than doubles. And the share that would have to take a loan or a withdrawal from their 401k or retirement plan also about doubles from 8% to 15%. Um, and a lot of people would charge the expense to their credit card, 34% for that $500 expense, 28% for the $5,000 expense. So we're looking at a significant amount of debt for a significant amount of people to pay for these expenses. So we had a handful of questions about what people are seeing at work in the past 6 months. How often have you experienced each of these items at work? So a lot of folks are saying that they're not caring about their job, or that they at least often felt that way, with 61%, about the same. So they didn't feel well or were sick at work, or performed at a lower level than they're capable of. Uh, then if you look at the bottom of that chart, those are the positive items. So feeling valued for contributions at work or social connection with colleagues. And unfortunately, those are lowest on the list, with the others being negative items. So only 24% say that they're feeling valued for their contributions at work, um, often or always. So how do we change that? Um, of those who say that they're doing just enough to get by or they're not caring about their job, we asked, what would most help you feel engaged at work? 64% said a higher wage. I don't think that's terribly surprising. But then benefits are quick on the heels of that. Well, I mean, it's half of higher wage, but behind higher wage is benefits. More time off, 31%, richer employee benefits, 31%. Um, Not as much around uh, things that doing the work itself. So tasks that better align with their values or mission, um, opportunities to connect with or get to know their boss, not nearly as important as benefits, not nearly as important as wages. So further in the past 12 months, looking at what's happening in the workplace, we've seen some changes compared to prior years. So this year, 34% are saying that there have been efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's down from 41% in prior years. And we asked about layoffs or reduced hours due to AI replacing human workers. 19% of employees say that this has happened at their workplace, compared to 6% in 2024. So AI really starting to pick up steam, and folks are seeing the impact, which leads nicely into this next slide. with kind of mixed reviews on AI. We're seeing comfort with using it rise. So 61% agree that they're comfortable using AI tools at work, and 59% say that it can help them do their job more efficiently. So that's on the uptick. But at the same time, 37% say that increased use of AI at work may ultimately result in their job being eliminated. So there's definitely some balance that has to happen here as people are um, seeing an increased comfort, but it's coupled with those concerns around job security that on the prior slide we saw some people are seeing in real time. Now, when it comes to AI and benefits, um, we're also seeing an increase in comfort with employees on that front. So 55% say they're comfortable using AI-powered tools for customized employee benefit plan recommendations. About the same, say they're comfortable using those tools to manage their personal finances. Um, so AI, not a surprise to anybody, but definitely on the rise. But that's not to say that it's not still important to have a person when it comes to guidance selecting the right benefits. We added to this question a response option this year where we said access to an AI tool that gives personalized benefits advice as a top way to help receive additional guidance in selecting benefits. 20% of folks said that they would like that as a top two choice out of these six. So while it's lowest on the list, I would not be surprised to see that start working its way up over the next handful of years. And it's possible that that's coming on as sort of a replacement for traditional online educational materials, as we saw a downtick in that to 31% this year. That being said, number one on that list is still a one-on-one meeting with a benefits counselor. Um, and those who want to meet with a benefits counselor, 70% would want to do so in person rather than virtually. So the human touch still vastly important. And I'll turn it over to Lisa to talk a little bit about job and benefit satisfaction.
Thanks, Greg. So, given everything that Greg just discussed and everything going on in the world, how do people feel about their jobs and benefits? Well, satisfaction with their current jobs on par with 2024, which is the last time we asked. Over half are extremely or very satisfied, and that includes those who are married, have a higher income, and have no debt. Only around 1 in 8 are dissatisfied. When asked about employers' efforts to improve well-being, over 4 in 10 view efforts positively for workplace, physical, and emotional well-being, and the latter two are up significantly from 2024. But financial well-being is lower than these at about a third of people rating it positively. So let's talk about financial wellness programs. Around 4 in 10 say their employer offers them the chance to participate in a financial wellness program, which, as you can see, is generally on par with past years. However, the number of those actually participating is up from 2024. Over half say they have participated in the wellness program their employer offers. As in previous years, most who participate find them useful, and those without access, for the most part, see at least some value in participating in them. So similar numbers as overall SAT say they are satisfied with their benefits package, almost half. This includes men, those married with higher incomes, and those without debt. When asked about how their benefits package can be improved, half maybe predictably say a greater financial contribution. About a third each say more flexibility or more financial well-being benefits resources, as you would expect from what Greg said earlier in this presentation. So we asked those who say employers have a responsibility to make sure employees are financially secure and well, how their employer can best do that. And similar themes come out, as we've seen. Over half say to offer higher wages, especially women and those with lower incomes. While over a third say the best way is to contribute or contribute more to a retirement savings plan. And that option is particularly popular among those 50 or older or those who have higher incomes, perhaps understandably. So, we asked respondents to estimate what percentage of their total compensation goes to benefits as opposed to wages. The example we gave to explain this to respondents is if 10% of your total compensation is benefits, such as PTO and insurance, and 90% is in salary, then you would put down 10% to the question. So, given these parameters, 4 in 10 estimated that 10 to 14% of their total compensation is benefits. However, the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that employers actually spend at least 30% on benefits, depending on the type of employer. So this indicates that workers are vastly underestimating how much their employers are actually spending. And lastly, I am going to discuss ICRAs, which are, if you aren't aware, individual coverage health reimbursement arrangements. So 8 in 10 we found are at least somewhat interested in these. Nearly half prefer having many carriers to choose from, but a sizable minority, about a quarter, have no preference. Half say they would need $500 or less in reimbursement to afford an appropriate plan, and this includes 3 in 10 who would need less than 400. Now, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, the average lower cost tier by plan by tier is approximately 456 for bronze and 615 for gold. So this indicates that generally consumers are in the ballpark, but they might be underestimating a bit.
All right, and we'll just wrap up with a couple of questions on workplace issues. And in today's heated political climate, we asked people about their comfort in working with people who have different political affiliations with them than them. And we found that despite the country's political situation causing stress to many workers. 67% say the current political situation in the country makes you feel stressed. Um, Workers are comfortable for the most part working with people who are different from them, with 86% saying they at least somewhat agree that they're comfortable doing so, and 74% um, saying that conversations about political and social issues should not occur in the workplace. So maybe a little bit different than what you see on social media with all the vitriol. People are fine with working with their colleagues who may be on the other side of the aisle. However, let's keep those political conversations to a minimum. And just a handful of notes on what's causing employers to or employees to switch employers. 34% of workers say they would require an increase of 20% or more to change employers. Some would leave for an increase of 0 to 10%. That's 22% of workers. Only about 9%, though, say that nothing would keep them from changing their current employer. The last time people actually made a switch or voluntarily changed employers, uh, plurality said their salary increase was was under 10%. Um, and only 12% say it stayed the same, although there were a handful who voluntarily made a change that decreased their income. Lastly, 38% have voluntarily changed their employer in the past 5 years. Only 14% saying that it was 15 or more years ago when they most recently changed employers. All right, so I will pause there. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
Back to the some of the stuff you were saying before about the like the employer basically caring about my um, emotional well-being or something like that. Um, those something along those lines. That's a sentiment that keeps coming up in a lot of these workplace surveys. And I keep wondering when we became dependent on our employer to
Hmm.
help us feel good. And
Hmm.
I'm wondering if there's a demographic tilt in that. I mean, it's being laid at the feet of younger workers, sort of looking to their employers to do that. And the same thing, you also see surveys that say people are wanting their employers to sort of like weigh in on, the issues of the day kind of thing. And I keep thinking the people that I ran into the workplace, granted, I'm at the far end of this thing. But we didn't want our employers to do that. We would have been appalled at some of the things that our employers decided to weigh in on. And particularly given the controversy that we've got going on now up in Minnesota and stuff like that, I just wonder how much of those kind of assumptions about, what you expect from your worker, from your employer is a demographic issue. It's like this is what, people coming into the workforce now, this is an important thing to them. This is something employers need to worry about. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Hmm. And
so
there's certainly a demographic tilt to it. Like whenever we ask those questions, we find it's the millennials, it's Gen Z, who are more interested in their employer providing, those say mental health resources and things like that. And I think that's an interesting point you raise about, your employer getting involved in things that may be political or controversial. And I think that's something that we might want to include in next year's survey, around, putting out statements when things happen, like
yeah.
in Minnesota, or I know a handful of years ago it was with George Floyd. We saw a lot of it. So that's a great point.
Well, it's interesting in the context of what you're also just saying there about how people feel about working with people who have different views and things like that. Because I think that I got to believe. I mean, again, what I'm led to believe by some surveys is that that ends up being an element. People that like Target's getting a lot of flack right now, but anybody who's headquartered in Minneapolis is like, people are sitting there expecting them to do something. I'm not sure that it's always the people who work for them that expect it, but again, um, it seems to me like it would, to your point, it would be a nice counterpart to this because I think that when it comes to choosing who you work for, I think for a lot of people that seems to matter. And it might matter pro or con. I mean, you might be equally offended at your employer's choice of support,
Mm.
but
Mm.
uh,
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, absolutely.
well, appreciate the update.
For sure. Uh, Anyone else? Any questions, comments, thoughts?
I do have a question.
Sure.
Uh, as somebody who has been following consumer financial wellness and now have actually focused on employee financial wellness, what I see missing is there's a missing lens that the American dream was built on a generation where benefits looked completely different than now. And so I find these questions sometimes not satisfactory because the American dream was built on a generation that had health insurance paid, pensions, probably higher education, and then defined benefits came in, went out, and defined contribution. And so there's something I think in my mind missing to bridge the gap because there's this kind of look, I sit on a lot of the benefits brokers, and I cringe when the focus is, well, you have to remind your employees how much you're paying for these things. And I feel like that's not a winning strategy. And so how do you bridge that gap? Like I just posed a question, which is, have you indexed the results by literally just looking at the generations? So uh, who makes up the workforce? And we know that there's like now probably four generations being represented in the workforce. And but they're not all equal because Gen Z is a much smaller portion. Baby boomers is a much smaller portion. But something needs to bridge that. Hey, look, the expectations are not crazy. There is this American dream that we all strive for that was built on a completely different set of like assumptions about employment, lifetime employment, which is why healthcare is important because if you work for your whole life in one company, at some point you're going to encounter a major medical event. Yet major medical events happen so less frequently for people who are in the Gen Z and the millennials. They're actually having car problems and they're having a lot of these other issues. Again, I'm not a researcher, but I kind of I feel for you guys in trying to figure out how to bridge this expectation generation environment completely different.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. And for this survey, yeah, we do, we weight by the population of the workforce, which includes age. So they're represented, how they are in the real world. But I hear what you're saying. I think that's kind of around the issues that those who are, say millennials are facing right now are very different from those that the boomers are going to be facing. And I think one of the things that we see that points to that is the increased interest in financial wellness programs. Um, so things like emergency savings accounts can play into the role of helping, with issues around whatever might be going on with your car. So I think that some of these issues are being, identified, and that the landscape is trying to shift or at least consider all the different concerns of different generations. And one thing that came out a little bit in this research is also the importance of flexibility and choice. We talked a little bit about ICRAs. We saw those aren't heavily adopted at this point, but again, that is shifting to defined contribution than defined benefit. Um, but we saw employees want choice, and things like cafeteria style plans seem to have a lot of uh, backing, especially from younger generations who want to pick benefits that are right from them. I want to get my pet insurance instead of life insurance because I don't have any children or whatever. So I think that that's something that you are starting to see.
Thank you. Yeah, because I uh, look at it and go, I wonder if somebody asked like the younger generation, would you prefer a pension? Because a lot of these so-called choice options ended up being like the 401k. We know it's completely lopsided. Like there are 70% of employed people who don't even have a 401k, 50%. And then of those who have, like 50% have a zero balance. And so it would be, as I said, it weighs heavy on me because I'm of the older generation. And when I see these results, I feel like the millennials and the Gen Z get discounted, um, yet they represent the bigger portion of the employee base.
Well, in fairness, most boomers never had a pension. So let's not over like embrace the notion of a defined benefit pension plan. And people assume they had them when they didn't, but it's a minority of the population in the private sector that ever had them. So God help us if we didn't have a 401k today. I don't know what the hell all the boomers would be doing about their retirement because they surely wouldn't have a pension to rely on. And a lot of this stuff, a lot of these benefits that were just kind of, they were there and you kind of went there and people take them for granted. I don't think people do have a good appreciation for how much is spent on their benefits packages. I think some of them, if you told them how much, they would say, please don't spend that on benefits. Give it to me in cash. Because some of the benefits that get embedded in these programs, I think are things that people don't really necessarily care about. And I think if people, it might have been good if people a long time ago had a better appreciation for how much was being spent on their health care, because because eventually the employers couldn't pay for it anymore, and now they're shifting it to the employees, and now we're all upset about it. But the employers have been managing this shit and trying to help people deal with the cost of healthcare for a long time. And I think that's one of the reasons our current healthcare system is kind of dysfunctional, because we've been insulated from the cost of healthcare. Um, so, it's an awakening moment, I think, for all of us. And I don't think it's just the younger generations that's being sort of dealt with it. I think the older generation, in some cases, may have been immunized from some of it, but in a lot of ways, people have been dealing with this stuff for a long time, just dealing with it in a different way. And nobody was preaching about the importance of emergency savings accounts. We all just figured out how to do it. So anyway,
See, I have a very different view of it. And I really love and I appreciate your perspective. But healthcare costs are not right because we
I agree.
know, right?
I agree.
So I cannot start with the premise that it's the employees who aren't appreciating it. I see a bloated system that's being shoved on employees and then tell them you better appreciate what we're giving you.
Oh,
Yet the employers themselves could have embraced different solutions a long time ago. Like the move to defined contribution didn't go as people expected. And I think that's what I'm saying. There's this muddiness. And but we still come back to we think of financial wellness as a habit and a behavior, which is really where I think is dangerous because we keep telling people, well, you just need to save more.
Thanks for the good conversation, guys. We are at time, so I'll close there. Just want to briefly say we're currently accepting sponsors for the 2026 survey, and we have some ideas already of some things to include. But we're going to be oversampling caregivers in the next wave. So perks of being a sponsor include input to the questionnaire, access to all the data, all the crosstabs, and the ability to use the data as you wish for your organization. So feel free to reach out to me if you're interested. But thanks again, everybody.